Hi everyone, welcome to the third webinar of a series of webinars and workshops conducted by TCS in lieu of the upcoming management case study examinations happening in November 2023. My name is Nick and I'm one of the lead tutors and evaluators for MCS at TCS. All right, so let's look at the session outcomes. This session is going to be a bit long. It would go on for 1.5 hours or a maximum of 1 hour and 45 minutes, especially given the fact that we have to I have to take you through the answers of mini mock. So first things first, I will be highlighting what you need to get right with regards to developing answers. So I will be highlighting the answering technique, and on top of that I will also highlight the time management technique, because if you get your answering technique right, you are in a position to manage your time appropriately as well. And based on a mini mock, I will be highlighting how you are supposed to practically implement the answering and time management techniques when developing answers for your paper. So, and on top of that, at the very end of today's session, I will be highlighting about common reasons which leads to failure. And for each issue which I'm going to highlight, I will be providing solutions so that you can avoid these things when preparing for your exam this time. You might have, attempted your exam last time and ended up failing. There's absolutely no point of demotivating. Instead, you have to come up with strategies, thereby ensuring that you rebound from failure, so that you stand a chance to pass this time. All right, so having said that, let me also remind you about the upcoming webinars and workshops which we have scheduled for you. Make use of these webinars and workshops, because these are developed with the intention of getting in touch with you on a weekly basis, so that you can keep track of your preparations. Even if you do not purchase any content from us, you can attend these webinars and workshops, because these are conducted free of charge. So the next webinar is happening on the 15th of October, which is next week. I will be highlighting information taken from the exam blueprint, thereby taking you through the examiner's comments in the fourth webinar, because it's of utmost importance that you understand what is expected from you. So by understanding the examiner's comments, you'd know what you need to achieve when developing your answers. And on top of that, I will also highlight tips pertaining to how to develop confidence, because especially given the fact that you are playing the role of a finance manager, if you have a positive attitude, if you are open-minded, you'd come up with better solutions or recommendations. That's exactly what you are supposed to achieve at your exam. So if you are positive, as per the CIMA examiner, confident students end up passing the exam comfortably. So I will be highlighting certain tips about these areas, and via the workshops, you can get in touch with us, and keep track of your performance. If you after attempting each mock exam, you might have certain questions pertaining to the theoretical elements, or you might want to polish up your answering technique. You might have questions. So all these concerns can be raised via these Q&A sessions which we are conducting. And these are two different workshops which we have scheduled to conduct. All right, so before we get into the nitty-gritties pertaining to answering technique, since the session is going to be long, I'm going to talk about what we offer in a jiffy and move on to the technicalities of today's webinar. So first things first, let me talk about the three different packages which we offer. We offer the three packages focused on three different types of students, considering their differing capabilities. So the first package is known as the Essentials Pack. It comes with the recorded versions of all the webinars, and you also get your hands on the 5 exam standard and pre-seen specific mock exams and suggested answers. Mind you, when developing these mock exams, we have made sure to cover the entire syllabus, thereby covering all E2, P2 and F2 relevant theoretical elements which can be tested at the exam. So if you attempt these 5 mock exams, you'd encounter the entire syllabus, questions thrown at you covering the entire syllabus, and you'd also be conversant with the type of questions which are thrown at you based on the information provided in the pre-scene. So, and on top of that, you'd also get your hands on the free pre-scene analysis videos. So there are 4 pre-scene analysis videos. We are actually only charging you for the mocks. These pre-scene analysis videos come free of charge under the essentials pack, and this is priced at £119. So if you are a student who is involved with if you're coming through the CIMA general route, and if you had completed your OTQ exams in your first sitting itself, if you had aced your OTQ exams, then it indicates that you have the capability to stick to a certain discipline when it comes to preparations. It indicates that you are comfortable with some type of self-learning. So if that is the case, go for the essentials pack, because these are the necessary material which you need to have access to in order to easily pass the exam, especially given the fact that you have aced your OTQ exams. Then looking at the second package, it's named as the value pack, and what comes under all the services or products which are offered under the essentials pack are covered under the value pack. And on top of that, you'd also get your hands on the annotated pre-scene. You would have seen what the annotated pre-scene looks like previously, because when we conducted the second webinar, when we're doing the pre-scene analysis, that's exactly what we utilized. So the pre-scene, the annotations which are mentioned within the pre-scene actually makes your life easier when it comes to understanding what's highlighted within the pre-scene, because as part of the annotations, or the objective of developing these annotations is to ensure that we come up with an appropriate summary of all the most important points. And as part of these annotations, we have also highlighted theoretical elements which can be tested at your exam, as well as probable exam scenarios. So if you go through this annotated pre-scene, you'd really understand what's highlighted within the pre-scene. Then you'd also get your hands on the industry analysis and financial analysis slides. So by going through the industry analysis slides, you can easily understand about your industry within an extremely short period of time. And on top of that, by going through the financial analysis slides, you can ensure that you gain an in-depth understanding about the financial performance of your company, as well as the closest competitor. Because if you had gone through the pre-scene document, you would have seen that financial statements of your company as well as its closest competitor have been provided. So both these financial statements have been evaluated as part of our financial analysis slide. So that's exactly what you can see here. The SOPL, the SOFP has been evaluated, and on top of that, the ratios of both the two considered companies have been evaluated, and concise yet precise evaluations are provided so that you can easily understand what's highlighted. The same could be said about the industry analysis slides. By looking at or going through this set of slides, you can easily understand about what happens within your chosen industry. All right, then you'd also get your hands on the top 10 likely issue slides, the case study familiarization kit, and you'd have access to a tutor managed live chat via Twilio, and you'd also gain access to the theory recaps covering the OTQ syllabus content. So if you are a student who is coming through the CIMA general route, this will be extremely beneficial for you, because you can easily brush up your knowledge pertaining to the OTQ syllabus content. So the value pack is priced at £199. So if you are a student who is coming through the CIMA general route, however, if you had failed any of your OTQ exams, or if you had struggled with your OTQ exams, then you need some type of additional attention. That's why you need to go for the value pack. And looking at the premium package, this is developed for students who are coming through the exemption route, and for those who failed the MCS exam previously. So if you're coming through the exemption route, there will be gaps in your knowledge, especially pertaining to the theoretical elements. You would have covered or completed your MBA or some type of degree program. However, you will not have all, or you will not have knowledge covering the syllabus in its entirety. So in such an environment, your chances of passing the exam is extremely low. If you look at the numbers provided by CIMA, students who are coming through the exemption route end up failing the exam once or twice before they pass it in the third time. Why is this the case? Because of knowledge gaps. So in order to ensure that these knowledge gaps are covered, we have prepared a special set of study resources, thereby including them within the premium package. And if you failed the previous exam, That is primarily because of the fact that you lack knowledge about theoretical elements. And on top of that, just because you know your theory, you cannot pass the exam. You need to be conversant with or you need to improve your application skills, because you are playing the role of a finance manager. So as a finance manager, when reporting to your senior finance manager or some other senior manager, um, you are not supposed to just reiterate theory. Instead, you are supposed to develop an answer which is aligned with the requirements highlighted. So you need to know your theory to develop a high quality answer, but it's only a matter of ensuring that you fulfill the requirements highlighted by your senior finance manager or some other senior manager. Okay, you'd understand these things better when I take you through the answer plan pertaining to IFRS 16 leases, because you guys requested for it. I will be covering it in today's session. So if you had failed the exam, or if you're coming through the exemption route, you need to go for the premium package. So it comes with everything which is covered under the value pack. Additionally, you'd gain access to an online mock exam platform or the learning management system. This is of utmost importance, because when after you have learned your answering and time management techniques, you need to practice them. So when practicing them, it's of utmost importance that you do it under exam conditions via the exam platform. So we have developed an exam platform which is akin to the Pearson VUE system. So rather than getting things wrong at the exam, you can do all the mistakes when attempting each exam via the exam platform. If that is the case, you'd avoid all your inefficiencies, and you'd get your bearings when attempting an exam via an exam platform. So you'd gain access to the exam platform so that you can attempt all 5 mocks under exam conditions via it. And you'd also gain access to professional marking and one-on-one tutor feedback on mocks 3, 4, and 5. So let me quickly show you the type of tutor feedback we provide at TCS. So as you can see, on a paragraph by paragraph basis, in-depth evaluations have been carried out with the intention of ensuring you understand what your shortcomings are. Because if you do not understand your shortcomings, you'd keep on repeating the same mistakes over and over again. So with the intention of ensuring you avoid it, we provide this type of tutor feedback. And at the very end, we provide mark allocations on a subtask by subtask basis, and based on it, we determine a success rate. So if you look at this student's answer script, this student had gained 97.5 marks, thereby passing this mock exam. However, if you look at subtasks B and C, the student's success rate is actually not up to the required level of standard. So the same could be said about subtask 3B and subtask 4B. So after you receive feedback, what you're supposed to do is you have to, on your own, redevelop answer plans focused on the subtasks in which you have not done a good job. So this is the type of revision which you need to conduct with the intention of improving the quality of your answer plans. Because if you do, your chances of passing the exam in your first sitting is extremely high. So after you receive tutor feedback, try to figure out where the success rate is below par, on a subtask by subtask basis, and focusing primarily on these subtasks, you need to redevelop answer plans. So, it makes your life easy because you are not reattempting the entire mock allocating 3 hours. Instead, you are just taking something like 30 minutes to simply redevelop the answer plans in the areas in which you have not gained good marks. So that's what you're supposed to do. And at the very end, you'd receive general comments as well, so that you can significantly improve your chances of passing as well. And you'd also get your hands on answer plans of all 5 mocks. So this is a summary of the suggested answers of all 5 mocks. So you need not come up with your own answer plans. You need not develop study summaries based on the suggested answers. We have done it for you. No other service provider is providing this material. And based on these answer plans only, we are conducting the master classes. So you'd understand, you'd get your bearings about what an answer plan looks like once I take you through the third part of today's webinar. And we are, as I highlighted earlier, we are conducting 20 master classes which are pre-recorded. And within these master classes, we are explaining you the logic of each and every question and answer. We are also teaching you theory as part of it. And on top of that, we are highlighting how to improve your application skills. So you need not refer to study texts or whatever your notes, short notes and whatnot to learn theory. Instead, especially if you had failed the exam previously or if you're coming through the FLP route, rather than spending a lot of time to learn theory, you can easily learn theory, improve your application skills whilst understand the logic of each and every answer by referring to each of these master classes. So this, since we have developed the 5 mock exams to cover the entire syllabus, these master classes cover all theoretical elements. So this is the best and the most effective way to learn theory, improve your application skills, and understand the logic of each and every answer. And this also comes with monthly installment plan where you can pay in 2 monthly installments and comes with a pass guarantee. So what this pass guarantee entails is that if you end up investing on the premium package and fail your exam, you will gain access to the premium package once more in your subsequent sitting free of charge. However, you need to fulfill certain requirements. Requirement number 1 is you need to attempt all 5 mock exams via the exam platform, because without attempting 5 mock exams, there's absolutely no chance that you pass your exam. Take it from me, you might be a champion student, but you can't achieve it because you have to attempt questions which cover all theoretical elements in its entirety. So in order to achieve it, you have to attempt 5 mock exams via the exam platform. And when providing answers, if you redevelop suggested answers, you are not in a position to claim the pass guarantee, because you have to be serious when attempting each mock exam. If you read, just copy and paste suggested answers, then you are cheating yourself. And if you cheat yourself, you're not going to pass the exam. And on top of that, you have to ensure that you gain more than 40% or gain an average of more than 40% for mocks 3, 4, and 5. Why have we stipulated this? To ensure that you are serious when attempting each mock exam, because if you're just doing it for the sake of attempting a mock exam, you will not succeed at your real exam. So, when attempting the 5 mocks, especially mocks 3, 4, and 5, you have to keep practicing the answering technique, time management techniques, and you have to be serious. If that is the case, you'd gain more than 40% on average. And after doing all these things, if you still end up failing, which is highly unlikely, you can claim the pass guarantee by clicking on this button and filling up the pass guarantee form. And all products are available until the 28th of February 2024. And you can save £50 if you pay in full. So this package comes at £599 if you pay in full, or you can opt for 2 installments of £325 each, and you can purchase via the website itself by clicking on either of these buttons. So let me quickly remind you about the study plan and what you're supposed to do. So according to the study plan, we are in week number 3. So within this week, you are supposed to attempt mock number 2. So out of all the students who had already invested in our packages, only 1 student had attempted mock number 1. So it's of utmost importance that you stick to the study plan. I highlighted why it's important to adhere to a study plan within our first webinar, because if you wait until the last moment, you'd run out of time. If you're not in a position to attempt a mock per week, your chances of passing the exam is extremely low, because you have to face a lot of stress. So in order to get rid of these stressful moments, it's better to start right now, because if you do, you have 5 weeks until your exam. On a weekly basis, you can attempt a mock and focus on improving the quality of your answers. So as I highlighted earlier, after receiving tutor feedback, you are supposed to redevelop answer plans for subtasks in which you have not gained appropriate marks. Okay, so you cannot do it if you wait until the last 2 weeks leading up to the exam. So start right now, start working on a mock on a week by week basis. You for yourself will see the improvement on a weekly basis. So according to the study plan, you are supposed to focus on attempting mock number 2 via the exam platform. So after this webinar, you'd understand what you need to achieve when developing answer plans. Then what's the 4 master classes which are relevant for mock number 2, so that you understand the logic of each answer, you learn theory as well as improve your application skills, and simply refer to the answer plans of mock number 2, and move on to mock number 3 in the next week, which is week number 4. All right, so having said that, let's move on to the most important element of today's webinar, which is about understanding or learning answering and time management techniques. And after you learn it, I'll show you how you are supposed to practically implement it when developing your answers. All right, so when developing answers, most students out there, 99% of the students, what they do is they'd read the question quickly, and they'd try to type out the fully fledged answer right after reading the question. So that is not the most prudent thing to do, because you need to spend some time to come up with a plan. That's why we call this an answer plan, because the CIMA examiner is trying to replicate a real life corporate environment. So in a real life corporate environment, if you receive an email from your senior finance manager, will you simply straight away start typing your suggestion or your recommendation, or would you actually take some time to structure your email to ensure that all the requirements which have been highlighted by your senior finance manager is covered via your response? So the prudent thing to do is to take a step back, spend some time to structure your answer, ensuring that all what is highlighted, all the requirements which are highlighted within the email are covered. Because if you don't do it, you'd receive another email saying, okay, out of the 4 tasks which I've highlighted, you have only provided answers for 2 tasks. So if you do the same in your exam, you'd end up failing the exam. So in order to ensure that you come up with high quality answers, in order to ensure that you fulfill the requirements in its entirety, you need to ensure that you stick to these answering techniques. So first things first, you are supposed to use headings and subheadings when developing your answers. So for each main task, within a certain question, there will be a two or three subtasks. For each subtask, you need to come up with a main heading, which is in bold and underlined format. And for each subtask, so if you want to further fraction out the answer, you can come up with subheadings. And if that is the case, a subheading needs to be in bold format. So for each subtask, you need to come up with a main heading, and the main heading needs to be in bold and underlined format. And if you feel like you need to further fraction out your answer, you can come up with subheadings. And if you do, a subheading needs to be in bold format. So that's the first thing which you need to remember. Then whenever you are providing answers, you have to provide answers in paragraphs. You are not supposed to provide answers in bullet points or single-lined sentences. So the CIMA examiner explicitly mentions this within the exam blueprint. So if when you are developing answers, you are supposed to provide answers in paragraphs. So when providing answers in paragraphs, you would understand these things later on in a little while when I take you through an answer plan. So let's assume within your answer plan, you come up with 7 main points. So for each point, you need to come up with a paragraph. So for instance, if there are 7 main points highlighted within your answer plan, you need to have 7 paragraphs within your answer. And each paragraph needs to consist of 2 to 4 lined sentences. All right, so you need to adhere to these guidelines. If not, chances of you passing is extremely low. All right, so what are you supposed to do with regards to time management? 1/3 of your time should be allocated towards reading the question and developing something called an answer plan or an answer structure. Then 2/3 of the time should be allocated towards towards typing rather. So what's the time allocation on a task by task basis? 45 minutes. So 1/3 of the time, which is 15 minutes of your time, should be allocated towards developing an answer plan. Okay, so 5 minutes should be allocated towards reading the question. 15 minutes should be allocated towards developing an answer plan. And once you have an answer structure or answer plan in place, then the remaining 25 minutes should be allocated towards typing out the fully fledged answer. So when it comes to typing out the fully fledged answer, it's just a matter of expanding your answer plan. So when typing answers, you are not supposed to think. Instead, you spend some time to think, come up with a plan, come up with an answer structure. And once you know what you're supposed to type, it's easy because it's just a matter of expanding each and every point which you have highlighted within the answer plan in paragraph format. Okay, so that's what you're supposed to do. And the expected typing speed is a minimum of 20 words per minute. If your typing speed is not up to par, there are so many free platforms out there which you can utilize to get your typing speed up. And when developing the answer plan and determining how many points need to appear within your answer plan, you need to look at the mark allocation for each and every subtask. So if you go through a typical paper, you'd understand what I'm talking about. So, I'm basing all these evaluations based on the mini mock which we have shared already, and you can find it via our exam platform as well. That's exactly what you can see here. So for each and every subtask, as you can see, a certain percentage is allocated. So these percentages will give you an indication about the amount of marks allocated for each subtask. So the weightage provided for subtask A is 56%. So the mark allocation for each task is 37.5 marks. So the mark allocation for this subtask is 37.5 marks into 56%. And the same applies to subtask B as well. So when you do it, you know for a fact how many marks are allocated. And when developing your answers, you are supposed to develop answers which are totally aligned with the marks allocated. So if you do it, you'd come up with answers which are concise and relevant to the requirement and relevant to mark allocations. Because what I've seen is most students who are not too conversant with what these weightages are, they'd end up, let's assume, out of these two subtasks, the first one is easy. So most students, what they do is they'd come up with an extremely lengthy answer for the first subtask. And if they are clueless about the type of answer they are supposed to provide for the second subtask, they'll come up with a short answer. Okay. But just because you write everything under the sun, or, just because you come up with a fully fledged answer or a lengthy answer for the areas in which you are comfortable with, you're not going to get marks. Instead, mark allocations are only based on the weightages. So you understand how many marks are allocated for each subtask. Based on the mark allocation, you try to understand how many points you need to develop within your answer plan. And once you do it, you come up with answers which are totally aligned with the marks allocated. Then you can easily pass your exam in the first sitting itself. So that's an important point which you need to remember. And do not spend time on formatting. The only type of formatting is about coming up with headings and subheadings and providing answers in paragraph format. Other than that, you need not worry about anything else. And remember, it's always about the quality of the points which you have highlighted within your answer. So that's exactly why I'm not saying this is the CIMA examiner telling us just because you provide lengthy answers, you are not going to get any marks. Instead, the examiner is looking at the quality. So that's exactly why you need to adhere to this answering technique. You need to develop answer plans before typing out your fully fledged answer. Because if you fulfill the quality related elements within your answer, then you can easily gain more than 100 marks out of 150. Okay, so these are the answering techniques, and although you know these answering techniques, you are not in a position to implement them at your real exam. Because take it from me, I'm asking you to allocate 15 minutes or a maximum of 20 minutes to develop an answer plan. But when you try to do it for the first time, it will take you 40 to 45 minutes. So the time allocation on a task by task basis is 45 minutes. But and I'm asking you guys to develop an answer plan within 20 minutes. But when you try to do it on your own for the first time, it will take you more than 40 minutes, or it will take you 45 minutes. So that's normal. It's just like you drive a vehicle for the first time. So when you drive a vehicle for the first time, there's a checklist in your mind. You need to get so many things right. So you have some type of anxiety because you are doing something for the first time. So this leads to a situation where you cannot manage your time. That's pretty normal. That's exactly why we are not providing tutor feedback for mocks 1 and 2. Mocks 1 and 2 are they are to ensure that you get your bearings with your answering and time management techniques. And by the time you are landing at mock number 3, you would have some type of control over your answering technique. And by the time you're done with all 5 mocks, you would have developed answer plans and adhered to the answering technique and time management techniques 20 times over. That's enough and more practice for you to champion it, because if you champion it, you'd come up with high quality answers, well structured answers. You'll never run out of time, and if that is the case, you can gain more than 100 marks easily at your real exam. So getting this right is not easy. That's exactly why we are suggesting that you attempt each mock exam under exam conditions. And after attempting the mock, you need to work on it a bit to further improve your answering technique. That's exactly why we want you guys to attempt a mock per week. Do not wait until the last moment, because if you do, you will never stick to this answering technique. Take it from me, you will never stick to this answering technique. You try to come up with your own methodology, which is simply to read the question and start typing the fully fledged answer. That's not going to work. You're going to have to repeat your sitting once more. All right, so that's these are the technicalities pertaining to answering and time management techniques. Now let's focus on what you need to cover when developing answers. You are supposed to read the scenario first, because the scenario carries relevant information which you need to address or include within your answer. So you would have gone through the pre-scene document so far. So within the pre-scene document, as I've mentioned in the second webinar, information is provided about the company with regards to what it encountered in the past. So within your pre-scene, information about the external dynamics, the internal dynamics of Cuppcar, as well as its financial statements and its closest competitors' financial statements are provided. However, all this information gives us an indication about what has happened within the past concerning the company, which is Cuppcar. However, at your exam, present information is provided. So when considering present information, it's of utmost importance that you read the questions properly. So or the scenario properly. So you have to allocate something like 5 minutes to read the scenario. If you're really slow at reading, you need to improve these things. And if you are extremely slow at reading, I'd actually not recommend you to do the exam in November. Instead, you would have to focus on attempting the exam in Feb. Why? Because you cannot improve your reading speed within just 5 weeks. It will take something like 7 to 8 weeks. So that if that is the case, do your exam in Feb. So read the scenario first. Then after reading the scenario, you are supposed to plot the requirements into headings and subheadings. I've done a typo. I've done a blunder here. You have to come up with headings and subheadings. And as I highlighted earlier, for each subtask, you need to come up with a main heading. And for each subtask, within each subtask, if you want to further faction out the answer, you are welcome to come up with subheadings. If that is the case, it needs to be in bold format. So let me quickly show you what I'm talking about. So if you look at task number 1, there are 2 main subtasks, and for each subtask, you are supposed to come up with main headings. So that's exactly what you can see. Task number 1, this is the main heading, which is in bold and underline format. And for the second subtask, you need to come up with main heading, which is again in bold and underline format. And if you want to further faction out the answer, you are welcome to come up with subheadings, which needs to be in bold format. That's exactly what you can see within this answer plan. All right. So you are first things first, what is the requirement? You are supposed to read through the scenario. After reading through the scenario, you are supposed to plot the requirements into headings and subheadings. After doing this, you are supposed to invest time to understand the requirement clearly. So in the quest of understanding the requirement, it's prudent if you can reiterate the requirement in simpler terms in your own words. Why is this necessary? Because if you look at this subtask, both these subtasks, it goes on for 2 lines. So whilst developing the answer plan, whilst going through exam stress, having to read 2 sentences drives you crazy. Rather than doing that, it's easy if you can reiterate the requirement in a simpler form so that you can easily refer to it and see what you are supposed to do. So this requirement goes as the first one: evaluate the challenges Cuppcar will face in complying with these with the 3 main dealership conditions of KMW and how we can overcome these challenges. So I've simply reiterated it as challenges of complying with dealership conditions and how to overcome. Then you can easily understand what you are expected to do. So challenges of complying the dealership condition, that's the first requirement. And for each challenge, you have to come up with suggestions rather to overcome them. So the second one goes as discuss the characteristics of debt and equity that should be considered when sourcing the funds for the investment required to establish the new dealership for KMW. My requirement reads as characteristics of debt and equity. So you can easily understand what you're supposed to achieve. So that's the step which I mentioned. Oops, give me a second, please. Oops. Yeah, sorry about that. So that's the third step, which is about investing time to understand the requirement. So when trying to understand the requirement, it's better if you can reiterate it in an understandable, concise format. Then you have to start developing your answer plan. And when developing the answer plan, a maximum of 1/3 of the time should be allocated. So as I highlighted earlier, 15 minutes should be allocated. I don't mind even if you take 20 minutes to develop the answer plan. And when developing the answer plan, you have to develop both the answer plans as per, give me a second, please. I screwed this up. My courses, MCS free, mocks, mini mock questions. Right, done. Sorry about that, these guys. So, yeah, so as per this requirement, there are 2 subtasks. So when developing the answer plan, you are supposed to develop the answer plan for both these subtasks. So these 20 minutes which you're supposed to allocate are supposed to be allocated for both subtasks, not just one. I do not want you to develop an answer plan for the first one, then expand it, then move on to the second answer plan and expand it. That's going to be inefficient. Instead, focus on developing the answer plans. Once you are done with it, there's no thinking involved when it comes to typing or expanding your answer plans. So then plan the answer in the answer screen itself. So when developing the answer plans, do not use your scratch pad, because what appears within the scratch pad will be deleted at the end of your exam. The marker will have no access to what we have typed out on the scratch pad. And on top of that, when you have to shift between 2 pages, it's a cumbersome process. It leads to inefficiencies. Instead, when developing the answer plan, do it on the answer screen itself, because if you do, then you won't miss out on any points which you have highlighted within the scratch pad when shifting between 2 screens. Instead, when you have the answer plan on the answer screen itself, it's easy for you to, extremely easy for you to keep expanding each point in an elaborative basis, and then expand the points within the answer plan. So what are your, I will be sharing a TikTok covering all these areas so that you constantly keep reminding yourself about the answering technique which I've highlighted. So first things first, read the scenario, allocate 5 minutes to do it, then come up with your headings and subheadings. After you do it, invest time to understand the requirement, reiterate the requirement in your own words so that you can easily understand what you're expected to do. Then start developing the answer plan. When doing it, spend 20 minutes to finalize your answer plan. And when developing these answer plans, do it on the answer screen itself. And once you have an answer plan at your disposal, utilizing the remaining time, which is 20 to 25 minutes, you can start expanding each and every answer point. All right, so having said that, let's move on to the discussion of the mini mock. Then you'd understand how these techniques need to be implemented in a practical sense. So before we move on to this area, any questions, guys? Did you guys understand what I highlighted? Any doubts pertaining to the answering techniques which I highlighted? Are you really conversant with what you are expected to achieve? Any questions? All right, seems like there aren't any more questions. So I'm moving on to the discussion of the mini mock. All right, so section number 1, the time allocation is 45 minutes, just like in your real exam. You have received the following email from your senior finance manager as you start your day at office. So as I've told you earlier, the CIMA examiner is trying to create or replicate a real life corporate environment. So it's as if you are receiving an email from one of your senior managers. So the subject goes as new dealership proposal. The board has received an interesting dealership proposal from KMW, a popular hybrid car manufacturer from Malin. So we have received a proposal to go ahead with a car dealership with KMW, which is an international company. So this is based in Malin. KMW's hybrid vehicles have garnered significant international acclaim and demand, and they are now eager to extend their presence into the Welland market. So they are already established within the Malandian market. Because of that, they are planning to expand into Welland, which is our market. Cuppcar has received an exclusive dealership proposal from KMW, which is good. Please refer to the board meeting minutes I have attached for more details. So always remember, for under each and every requirement or under each and every task, you will have access to reference material. Sometimes under exam pressure, students forget to check the reference material. So you can avoid all these things if you utilize our exam platform, because then you'd understand what you'd miss out on if you forget to check the reference material. So when attempting, that's exactly why I've said you have to attempt 5 mock exams under exam conditions. Then you'd commit these mistakes rather than committing the same mistakes at your real exam. So always remember, under each task there will be reference material. Always remember to check them. All right, so let's go through the reference material to see what it comprises of. Extract from board minutes. The popular hybrid car manufacturer KMW is keen to enter the Welland market. They have first approached Cuppcar for an exclusive dealership proposal. If this deal proceeds, we will be KMW's one and only dealership in Welland for the next 3 years. So if this is the case, it will drive significant competitive advantage for Cuppcar. However, in order to award the exclusive dealership to Cuppcar, KMW has stipulated 3 main conditions. We need to determine whether we are capable of complying with these conditions. So the board members are, trying to evaluate the conditions which are stipulated by KMW before we sign up the agreement to sell KMW's cars within our dealerships. 3 main conditions of the dealership proposal are joint marketing. Cuppcar should actively participate in joint marketing initiatives with KMW to promote the brand's vehicles and services in the Welland market. So that's the first condition. Moving on to the second condition, joint decision making. Cuppcar should establish regular communication channels and joint decision making processes to ensure the smooth operation of new dealership. Yes, so whenever we are running our new dealerships, in order to ensure that we run the operations in the most effective manner, we have to engage with joint or collaborative decision making. So we can't take our decisions on our own. Instead, we have to consult KMW's decision makers as well. Then the third point is about sustainable operations. Cuppcar is required to implement sustainable and environmentally responsible practices at the new dealership, including waste reduction, energy efficiency, and eco-friendly business operations. So we have to achieve sustainability as well. Moreover, KMW requires us to open 8 new car dealerships for them in 8 major cities in Welland. This would require a significant capital investment for Cuppcar, and we need to determine how we can best source the required finance. Our senior finance manager has informed the board that the initial investment required to set up the dealership has been projected to be $160 million. All right. So these are the conditions which you need to achieve. And if you have to go ahead with this agreement, then we'd have to fund or find certain investments which amounts to $160 million. Okay, so let's look at the first requirement. I need you to draft a briefing paper for the board that covers the following. Firstly, evaluate the challenges Cuppcar will face in complying with the 3 main dealership conditions of KMW and how we can overcome those challenges. So based on the weightage provided, 56% of the total marks are allocated for this requirement. So let's try to figure out what you're supposed to do. So as I highlighted earlier, first things first, you are supposed to read through the scenario. When reading through the scenario, you have to go through the reference material as well. So once you're done with it, the next step is, coming up with your main headings and subheadings. So the main heading goes as challenges Cuppcar will face in complying with the three main leadership conditions of KMW and how we can overcome those challenges. So that's in bold and underline format. And once we had done it, for each challenge, if you want, you can come up with a subheading, but I have not adhered to it when developing this answer plan, but you are welcome to come up with subheadings for each of the challenges highlighted. If that is the case, each subheading needs to be in bold format. All right, so once you have done it, you are supposed to reiterate the requirement in a concise manner. So I've, as I mentioned earlier, I've made things simple. I've come up with, the subtask or reiterated the subtask, which goes as challenges of complying with dealership conditions and how to overcome each. And based on the weightage provided, 21 marks are allocated. So if there are 21 marks allocated, you need to have something like 10 to 11 points, 10 to 11 valid points within your answer plan. So if you do, you'd gain full marks. So rather than coming up with, hordes and hordes of irrelevant information, you'd be precise when developing the answer plan. Why? Because you are always considering about mark allocations. So 21 marks are allocated. So for each point, it usually carries something like 2 marks. So you need to have 10 to 11 valid points within your answer plan. So let's try to figure out what you are supposed to cover within this answer plan. So if you look at this question, this tests your capabilities with regards to application, because this is not a highly theoretical question. Instead, you have to consider the information provided in the scenario and come up with your practical suggestions or recommendations. So as a finance manager, mostly your practical decision making capabilities will be tested. I highlighted this in the first webinar as well. So mostly your practical decision making will be tested, but when coming up with your suggestions or recommendations, you need knowledge about theoretical elements as well. So as per the information provided, you are supposed to talk about joint marketing activities, joint decision making, and carrying out sustainable operations. So when evaluating each of these areas, your knowledge pertaining to E2 relevant syllabus content is tested, because how to be involved with group decision making, how to work with another set of team members, and how to conduct our operations in a sustainable manner. All these things are covered mainly under the HR related elements. If you look at joint marketing and joint decision making, these are covered under the HR based areas under your E2 syllabus. And when it comes to sustainability, these are covered under the operations and project management related areas within the E2 syllabus. So whenever your E2 related knowledge is tested, the type of answers which you are supposed to provide are usually supposed to be highly practical. Okay. So first things first, looking at the first challenge, marketing alignment. So this is about maintaining Cuppcar's brand identity while promoting KMW's hybrid vehicles as per what is highlighted within the scenario. So we have to, when conducting the marketing activities, we are not only supposed to promote or market KMW's brand, we have to ensure that our brand is promoted as well. So the issue is with regards to achieving a brand consistency, because we are considering two different brands, Cuppcar and KMW. There could be inconsistencies within the two brands. So we have to settle issues in these areas. And when it comes to targeting or carrying out target market campaigns, we have to do this appropriately. So identifying the appropriate type of customers or identifying our segments, customer segments could be problematic. And on top of that, when allocating resources, we are supposed to spend money to market somebody else's brand. So when doing it, our board members might think that we are wasting our money or wasting our financial and non-financial resources. So these are the type of issues we'd face when trying to achieve the said type of marketing alignment between the two companies. So how are we supposed to overcome this? Because as per the requirement, we are supposed to highlight the issues, and on top of that, come up with appropriate recommendations to overcome each of these issues. So in order to overcome these problems, it's better to engage with collaborative decision making, or we have to conduct collaborative discussions to identify the common goals and values of both entities. If that is the case, we can develop a highly efficient marketing campaign which benefits both the companies. Especially, we have to come up with common goals and values pertaining to resource allocation, mainly given the fact that we are supposed to spend money and effort to market somebody else's brand. And we have to establish clear branding, highlighting both Cuppcar and KMW. So just because KMW expects us to be involved with joint marketing campaigns, it does not mean that KMW should win. We should win from it as well. So we have to establish our branding strategies and branding elements, communicate them with KMW, and when working hand in hand with them, highlight what we are trying to achieve. Then we can listen to what KMW wants to achieve. If that is the case, we'll come up with a highly effective marketing campaign, which is beneficial for both companies. And we have to establish cross-functional teams from both companies with regards to coordination. If that is the case, we are in a position to come up with a consistent branding strategy. Resources will be allocated properly, and we will, both the companies, since they are involved with target marketing campaigns, they identify the most profitable customer segment, thereby carry out targeting strategies in an appropriate manner. And it's better to regularly review and adjust each of these strategies if we want to change it as well. And whenever we are adjusting these strategies, we have to communicate these changes to KMW and seek their approval, or we have to be involved with participative decision making. Okay, so that's how we overcome each of these challenges. Then moving on to the second challenge with regards to complexity in communication. What are the issues? If we go ahead with this agreement with KMW, what type of issues are we exposed to? There might be differences in corporate culture, because this company KMW is based in some other country mainland, and the way in which it runs its business will replicate the culture within their own country. So there could be differences in corporate culture. There could be differences in the way in which they arrive at decisions, the working hours. There will be definitely language barriers, given the fact that they are, established within a separate market or in mainland. Okay, so how are we supposed to overcome each of these issues? It's better to conduct cross-cultural training for employees of both companies. So when conducting training sessions, if we can include both sets of employees from both companies, then it's easy to understand each other's culture, each other's differences, and overcome them. Okay, so when conducting training, we have to go for group training sessions. Then when it comes to communication, it's better if we can structure our communication as much as possible, because especially given the fact that we are going to deal with a company which is based in another country. In order to overcome all these issues, it's better to go for structured or formalized or adhere to formalized methodologies when it comes to communication. If we do, we can easily understand inconsistencies or inefficiencies in communication and overcome each of them, because we are trying to keep track of issues with communication, because we are being serious about it. So first things first, we have to define communication protocols and channels. Okay, so what type of communication channels are we supposed to utilize, and what type of protocols do we need to adhere to, who can talk to whom, and whatnot. All these type of rules or protocols needs to be stipulated. And virtual meetings and document sharing should be encouraged, especially given the fact that this company is located within another country. So when it comes to virtual meetings, again, we have to set protocols as to how we are supposed to set up a meeting, how to send invites and to what type of individuals we are supposed to send invites, especially if there's some type of a decision which includes confidential disclosure of confidential information. We should not include all types of employees of both companies or low-level employees from both companies. So all these things needs to be stipulated, and we have to come up with protocols pertaining to document sharing again, especially if we are sharing confidential information with each other. And it's better to hire bilingual staff so that communication barriers or language barriers can be eroded, and it's better to use translation services or conduct language training, whichever is convenient for Cuppcar and KMW. And the third challenge is about the costs of sustainable operations. So what type of issues are we exposed to? If we are to be sustainable and reduce our wastage and whatnot, we'd have to significantly spend, or we have to involve ourselves with significant initial investments. That's for instance, it's mentioned within the question that if we are to sell this brand via our dealerships, we have to come up with or open up 8 new dealerships, and for that we are supposed to spend $160 million. And if you are on top of that, if you are supposed to be sustainable, then we'd have to spend additional investments. So that's the challenge with regards, the main challenge with regards to being carrying out operations in a sustainable manner. And we'd also have to train our workforce in order to ensure that everybody within the organization believes in sustainability and implements sustainability on a daily basis. So how are we supposed to overcome this problem? It's better to go for a phased approach to investment rather than trying to fully fund the sustainability initiatives which we are going to carry out within our car dealerships. So it helps us to balance short-term costs with long-term benefits. So rather than going for a lump sum investment, it's better to go for a phased approach to investments. And we can also focus on high impact projects for quick returns when spending these investments, especially when it comes to trying and achieving the required level of sustainability. Then I said that we need to train our employees, or else they will not believe in or adhere to these sustainability requirements. So we have to conduct employee training, and on top of that, we have to explore financial support. We can talk with the government and see whether the government will give us a grant. If that is the case, we will not have to go for equity or debt financing. We have to see whether we are exposed to certain incentives, again provided by the government, or whether we can benefit from tax breaks. So we have to have a chat with the government and see, because we are contributing positively to the environment and the economy. So in such an environment, it's better to talk with the government and see what type of benefits it can offer. All right, so that's the answer for the first subtask. And as you can see, it's highly practical. The type of issues which I've highlighted are totally relevant to the information provided within the scenario. And after understanding or identifying the most relevant issues, you can come up with appropriate recommendations to overcome each of these issues. That's exactly what I've done. So I've only come up with strategies to overcome these issues based on the issues which I've highlighted under each and every challenge. Okay, so that's exactly what you are supposed to do when developing your answers. So this is one aspect of the way in which the CIMA examiner will throw questions at you, which tests your which tests your practical decision-making capabilities or practical thinking capabilities. However, there could be questions which tests your technical knowledge, especially. I'm not gonna take you through the second subtask. You can go through the answer plans, which will be uploaded to the website in a while. Then you are in a position to easily understand what's highlighted. And on top of that, these areas are covered in our mock number 1. And via the master classes, by listening to them, you can easily understand the logic behind each answer, how theoretical elements are tested, and you can learn theoretical elements, and on top of that, improve your practical application skills. All right, so moving on to task number one, sorry, task number two, a 45-minute question. I want to, since you guys requested that I cover a question based on IAS 16, I'm going to do it right now. So I'm going to primarily focus on subtask two of task number two. A week has passed and you have returned to work after a 2-day leave. You receive an email from your senior finance manager. The subject goes as KMW's proposal. So I'm only gonna read the relevant area or the area which is relevant to the subtask. On an unrelated matter, I would appreciate if you could provide some assistance to the newly recruited finance officer regarding the accounting treatment for a new fleet leasing agreement we are entering into with United Holdings. So, that's exactly when I was conducting the first webinar, I said when attempting mock exams, they need to be pre-scene specific. So as per what is highlighted within our pre-scene document, we are involved with fleet leasing arrangements. And when going ahead with fleet leasing arrangements, we go for or we opt for operating leases. So if you do not know this knowledge, then if you come up with an answer which highlights about financing leases or finance leases, you're going to get you're going to end up gaining low marks. So you have to ensure that you know your pre-scene. That's exactly why we have come up with an annotated pre-scene and come up with 4 pre-scene analysis videos. And once you go through them, you would have all this knowledge. And by referring to the TikTok summaries, you can easily keep reminding yourself about the most important points. So your senior finance manager expects your assistance to be provided to the newly recruited finance officer regarding the accounting treatment for new fleet leasing arrangement we are entering into with United Holidays or Holdings rather. The terms of the lease agreements are included in the second attachment to this email for your reference. Okay, so let's move on to the second attachment, fleet leasing. Cuppcar will be leasing out 3 used Nexus cars for the period of 2 years to United Holdings. Cuppcar's mechanics have confirmed that these cars are in good running condition and can be used for at least 8 more years, if not more, without any major technical issues. So what's the useful life of these set of cars which we are going to sell, not sell actually, which we are going to go for an operating lease with United Holdings? 8 years. So the useful life of these assets are 8 years. Let's look at the lease terms. The lease term shall be 2 years commencing from the 1st of March 2024 with the option for United Holdings to extend the lease term for a further period at market rate. So the lease, although we can utilize these assets for the upcoming 8 years, the lease term is actually just 2 years, and the lease term starts on the 1st of March 2024. And United Holdings has the option of extending the lease term after 2 years. However, when extending the lease term, it should be at market rate. This is extremely significant because I will be taking you through certain conditions as per IFRS 16. When going through these conditions, you'd understand what this market rate indicates. So based on this market rate, we can stipulate whether we have to opt for a finance lease or an operating lease. So be considerate about it when I'm taking you through the answer. The lease rental shall be $240,000 per annum. So on an annual basis, United Holdings will be paying us $240,000. Cuppcar will cover car servicing and repairs not caused by the lessee during the lease period. So if the lessee, which is United Holdings, is exposed to certain accidents or whatnot, if the cars are damaged, then they have to repair it on their own. Other than that, routine repair and maintenance will be conducted by us, which is the lessor. If the lease is cancelled during the lease period, United Holdings shall bear the legal costs of cancellation. So before 2 years, if the agreement is cancelled or barred, then United Holdings will have to bear these legal costs pertaining to the cancellation. So these are the technical details provided. Let's try to figure out what you are supposed to achieve. Secondly, explain how the proposed lease should be treated in our financial statement. So it's quite simple. Considering all this information provided, you need to say how it affects our financial statements. All right. So the weightage provided is 44%. Based on it, you can easily understand how many marks are allocated. So I'm going to move on to the second part, which is I've come up with a main heading which goes as accounting treatment lease. And based on the weightage provided, 16.5 marks are allocated for your answer. All right. So under what's your knowledge pertaining to IFRS 16 leases is tested as part of this question. So for mentioning the number and the name of the IAS or the IFRS, you get usually get a single mark. Okay, so I've made a blunder here. I should have typed IFRS 16 leases. So I've when uploading this document, I'll update it with relevant information. So IFRS 16 is leases. So according to IFRS 16, the assets owner is Cuppcar. So the ownership or the company which holds the ownership of a certain asset is considered as a lessor, and the company which keeps using this asset is considered as a lessee. So Cuppcar is the lessor according to the information provided, because it appears that we are the owner of the asset. So because of that, lessor accounting applies. All right. Then we have to consider whether this should be considered as a finance or an operating lease. So you are not supposed to highlight all these points which appears within IFRS 16. Instead, I've stipulated these points with the intention of explaining the theoretical element which you need to be aware of. So I said, via the master classes, we are teaching you theory as well as focusing on how to improve your application skills. So with the intention of teaching you theory, I've just highlighted these points and I'll be explaining each of these points. Other than that, when developing your answers, you are not expected to come up with highly theoretical answers, because as I mentioned earlier within this webinar, you are receiving an email from your senior finance manager, and she's asking about how we should treat these leases within our financial statements. You are not supposed to highlight all the information which appears within IFRS 16. You are not supposed to say, we are supposed to consider this as a finance. We have to stipulate whether this is a finance lease or an operating lease. And in order to recognize it, all these points needs to be considered, then move on to application. That is not relevant, because your senior finance manager will consider highly theoretical information to be irrelevant. So I've only included these points with the intention of teaching you theory. So when considering a lease and stipulating it as a finance or an operating lease, you have to look into these points. The ownership is transferred to the lessee at the end of the lease. So as per the information provided, there's no indication about the ownership of the cars being transferred to United Holdings. So we have not fulfilled this requirement as per the information provided. The lessee has the option to purchase the asset for a price substantially below the fair value of the asset, and it is reasonably certain that the option will be exercised. So the lessee, which is United Holdings, should have the option to purchase the asset for price which is substantially below the fair value of the asset. Fair value is the market value. So the value of the asset, if it's something like $200,000, if that's the value, and the purchase price of the asset is below $200,000, then it needs to be considered as a finance lease. If not, it should be considered as an operating lease. So the lessee should have the option to purchase the asset for price which is significantly below the market price of the asset or the fair value of the asset. If that is the case, in such an environment, it's considered as a finance lease. However, if that's not the case, it should be considered as an operating lease. And the lease term is for a major part of the asset's useful life. So you have to consider the useful life of the asset and compare it with the lease term of the asset. All right, so I'll explain how to do this when I take you through the application related areas. So if you look at the information provided, the lease term goes on for just 2 years, but we can utilize this asset for 8 years. So 2 divided by 8 gives you an answer of 25%. So this United Holdings is just utilizing the asset if you consider the period, just 25% of the asset is actually utilized by United Holdings. So in such an environment, you cannot consider it as a finance lease. You should consider it under an operating lease. The lease term is for major part of the useful. It should, if you are to consider this lease as a finance lease, the lease term should be for major part of the asset's useful life, which is 75% or more. How can you understand it? By or compute it by determining the useful life of the asset and the lease term. You have to divide the lease term by the useful life of the asset. And if it's more than 75%, then it needs to be considered as a finance lease. If not, it needs to be stipulated as an operating lease. The present value of the minimum lease payments amount to substantially the fair value of the asset. So you keep on, when you go for a lease agreement, you keep on paying certain amounts of money. So these are the annual, monthly, or quarterly lease payments. So when paying out these lease payments, you have to compute everything together and see how much in total a company is paying when going ahead with this lease agreement. So the present value of the minimum lease payment should be computed. So according to the information provided, United Holdings is supposed to utilize these assets for the upcoming 2 years. And they are supposed to pay $240,000 per annum. So $240,000 per annum will be paid for 2 years. So we have to consider the present value of these payments, consider everything together and see and compare it with the fair value or the market value of the asset. So the present value of the minimum lease payment amounts to substantially the fair value of the asset. So if when you compute or add all these lease payments and consider the present value, if it is equal to the fair value, then it's as if the lessee is purchasing the asset outright. If that is the case, it needs to be considered as a finance lease. If not, when you compare the total lease payments, the present value of the total lease payments against the fair value of the asset, if the total lease payments are significantly lesser, then it's as if the lessee is just renting out these assets from us. If that is the case, it needs to be considered as an operating lease. The leased assets are of such a specialized nature that only the lessee can use them without major modifications. So this is not actually applicable in this scenario. Why is that the case? Because we are leasing out vehicles and there's no modification expected from United Holdings as per what they have highlighted. However, in manufacturing environments, usually when you are opting to purchase a machine, rather than purchasing a machine which is highly specialized or custom made, so if you are opting to purchase a machine which is bespoke or custom made, rather than purchasing a machine, if you go for a lease agreement, your machine will not be some other company might not be in a position to utilize your machine because it's highly customized. So if you are going for a lease agreement for a customized machine or a vehicle, then it should be considered as under a finance lease. If not, it should be considered under an operating lease. So as per the information provided, there's no modification or customization provided to the cars which we are giving out to United Holdings. So this does not apply to this. This condition does not apply to this scenario. And the lessee bears losses arising from canceling the lease. There's indication about lease cancellation charges. So if the lessee bears the losses arising from it, that's United Holdings, it needs to be considered as a finance lease. If not, it needs to be considered as an operating lease. And the lessee can continue the lease for secondary period at a rate below market rent. So after the lease time period expires, if they can continue to utilize these assets for an extended time period, if they pay a rate which is below the market rent rate, then it should be considered as a finance lease. If not, it should be considered as an operating lease. So these are the theoretical elements pertaining to IFRS 16 when it comes to stipulating whether a certain lease is to be considered as a finance or an operating lease. And let's look at how you are supposed to apply your knowledge considering the information provided. All right, so finance or operating lease, characteristics indicative of a finance lease. The first characteristics which we need to look at is with regards to the lease term. The lease term is for major part of the useful. We need to determine whether the lease term is for major part of the asset's useful life. So after we understand or look at the information provided as part of this question, the lease is not for a major part of the asset when considering its useful economic life. It's just 25%. So how did I arrive at this figure? As I highlighted earlier, the useful life of the asset is 8 years. The lease term is just 2 years. So 2 divided by 8 is 25%. If that is the case, the lease term is not for a major part of the asset's useful life. And if that is the case, this needs to be considered as an operating lease. And the second characteristic, lessee can renew the lease for another period at below market rent. So based on the information provided, United Holdings can renew. So if the lease, with the option for United Holdings to extend the lease for further period at market rate. So they can extend the lease for a further period. However, it's stipulated that they are supposed to do it at market rate, not below the market rate. So as per IFRS 16, a lessee can, we are supposed to consider this as a finance lease if the lessee can renew the lease for another period at below market rate. But these guys, according to the information provided, these guys are planning to go for extended time periods or extend the time period at the market rate, not below the market rate. So if they go for an extension below the market rate, it needs to be considered as a finance lease. However, since they are not considering to go for a rate which is below the market rate, this should be stipulated as an operating lease. And the next characteristic is about the lessee bearing losses arising from the cancellation of the lease. And United Holdings lessee is supposed to bear these costs. So according to this condition, it appears that this should be stipulated as a finance lease. So when you look at the first two characteristics, it appears that we should consider this to be an operating lease. And when you look at the third characteristic, it appears that we should consider this to be a finance lease. So what is the what should be your conclusion? When thinking about the conclusion, according to IFRS 16, you have to be considerate about the substance over form. So the third characteristic about lessee bearing losses is actually minute compared to the two characteristics, because in the first one, we have compared the lease term with the asset's useful life, thereby determining whether the lease term is for a major part of the useful life of the asset. So that's extremely significant. And under that, we figured out that these assets should be considered as operating leases. Then the second one is about, if we go for renewal of the contract, lease contract, at what rate these guys are supposed to pay us. And they have agreed to pay us at market rate. However, according to IFRS 16, if we are to consider this to be a finance lease, it needs to be below market rate. So that's extremely significant as well, compared with the third characteristic, which is about losses pertaining to lease cancellation charges and whatnot. So considering that the first 2 points are prominent, given that we are supposed to consider the substance over form, I've concluded that we should operate this, we should consider this as an operating lease. So I've highlighted what type of lease we are supposed to consider. Then after considering the type of lease, I've moved on to highlight the accounting treatment. So accounting treatment pertaining to an operating lease is twofold. With regards to lease receipts, whenever we are receiving money from United Holdings as per the lease agreement, it should be shown as income in the statement of profit and loss on straight line method over the lease term, which is 2 years. This is totally aligned with what is highlighted within IFRS 16. So if you are exposed to under an operating lease, if you are exposed to additional lease income, it needs to be sent to the SOPL because that's where we send our income. And when considering this income, it should be on straight line method over the lease period. And as per the information provided, the lease period is just 2 years. And Cuppcar should recognize a lease income of $240,000 per annum. So that this is where you gain marks for application. So you have utilized the amounts which are highlighted within the question, so that you provide the added value to your answer. Any differences between amounts charged and the amounts received? So there could be instances where United Holdings pays a lesser amount when they're supposed to pay $240,000 annually. At the end of the year, we might be exposed to a situation where they have only paid $220,000, or else in certain years they might pay more than $240,000. So, based on these payments, they might pay less or more. Based on these payments, these needs to be recognized as accrued income or deferred income in the statement of financial position. All right, so that's the accounting treatment. Then looking at the subsequent treatment, the carrying amount. So what are you supposed to do in the next year? Okay, so from next year onwards, the carrying amount of the lease receivable account should be stipulated. So our finance income should increase, and whenever we receive cash, our finance income or the asset value should decrease. Okay. All right. So these are the accounting treatment pertaining to a finance lease. I'm not going to explain these elements because it's taking up a lot of time. These are covered via our master classes. I just wanted to give you a glimpse of what's covered under the master classes. So it's highly unlikely that your knowledge pertaining to finance leases will be tested at the exam, especially given the fact that it's mentioned clearly within the preceding document that whenever we go for fleet leasing agreements, we engage ourselves with operating leases. However, a question is thrown at you. You need to focus on these areas. So let me quickly, stipulate what we are supposed to do when it comes to recognizing and de-recognizing these finance leases within our financial statements. So first things first, you need to see what or how we have achieved or not achieved each of these conditions. So based on it, you are supposed to identify whether a certain asset needs to be considered as a finance or an operating lease. And if we identify that a certain asset is supposed to be considered as a finance lease, you need to de-recognize this asset from non-current assets, because simply in order to remember, what you need to have in mind is an operating lease is a situation where it's as if we are renting out one of our assets to a third party. So the third party pays a rent, utilizes our asset, and returns it back to us. That's how an operating lease works. In a finance lease, what happens is it's as if the third party is purchasing the asset outright from us. So when it comes to purchasing the asset, rather than paying in full, just like when you opt for a loan, they might go for a lease agreement where they pay the required amount in a staggered approach, but by the end of the lease term, the asset will be owned by the third party. So so under a finance lease, since the asset is being, it's as if we are selling the asset at the end of the lease period to a third party, we have to de-recognize such assets from our non-current asset figure. So you from our SOFP or statement of financial position, you have to consider the non-current assets and the value of these assets which are highlighted as non-current assets, and this value should be taken out of non-current assets. Instead, it should be recognized under receivables, and under receivables there should be a separate line item which goes as finance lease receivable. Okay, so this asset which used to be a non-current asset is stipulated as a current asset under receivables under a separate line item which goes as finance lease receivable. And you have to calculate the net investment of the lease, and this is how we are supposed to calculate the net investment. We have to compute the present value of unreceived fixed and variable rental payments, residual value guarantees and ungranted residual values, and termination penalties, And in order to compute the present value, you have to discount it at the least rate if it is provided within the question. And on an annual basis, you have to, whenever you receive cash, you have to decrease your cash receipts within the SOFP and increase the finance income which appears within your SOPL. And when calculating the finance income, you have to consider the opening balance and multiply it by the discount rate. So I'm not going to explain these things in depth because it's going to take a lot of time. These are highlighted within our master classes. So that brings us to the end of the discussion of the mini mock. I hope you guys understood the type of answers you are supposed to develop. So this is the similar approach which we adhere to when developing our master classes. So via the master classes, we are teaching you theory as well as teaching you how to apply your theory in a practical manner, and also highlighting the logic behind each and every answer so that you can easily understand why a certain answer appears as part of the suggested answer and try and replicate the same methodology when developing your own answers. All right. Any questions before we move on to the last part of today's webinar? Any questions? So Abigail is asking a question. Please explain. Let me pause the recording. All right, seems like there aren't any questions. So I'm going to move on to the last part of today's webinar, which is about highlighting points pertinent to how you can, rebound from failure, because you might have failed your MCS exam last time or on multiple occasions. If that is the case, you have to change your strategy when it comes to preparations this time. So first things first, you need to conduct your own personal reflection and see whether you gave your best last time. Because if you had shortcomings last time, and if you keep on practicing the same shortcomings this time, you'd end up failing in this sitting as well. So you need to figure out, whilst conducting this personal reflection as to where you went wrong, you need to diagnose the reasons first and address them this time in order to avoid inefficiencies when sitting for the exam. And it's better to refer to the mini mock and suggested answers as well as the examiner's report to figure out what your real shortcomings are. However, I've made your life easier. I'm going to highlight common shortcomings faced by students attempting the MCS exam, and for each, I've come up with solutions. And you might not have opted for tutor feedback on your mock exams last time. And this is especially relevant for students who had gotten marks below 70. So if you had gained marks which is above 70, then it indicates that you have some type of knowledge, or you have an appropriate level of knowledge about theoretical elements, but you need to improve your focus when it comes to application skills, because as I've highlighted earlier, just because you know your theory, you cannot pass your exam. That's exactly what you saw when I took you through the answer for subtask A of task number 1. It tested your knowledge pertaining to E2 relevant concepts. However, the way in which you are supposed to apply this knowledge was highly practical. So if you got more than 70 marks, then there's something wrong with your application skills. And if you gain less than 70 marks, then it appears that you do not know your theory, or there are gaps when it comes to theoretical knowledge. And again, you need to improve your application skills. So it's better to opt for tutor feedback based on the marks which you have gained, in order to really understand what your shortcomings are. Because as I told you earlier, you need to avoid these shortcomings if you want to achieve a pass this time. And your action plan should be to work smarter than the previous attempt. And our study plan replicates that. So according to our study plan, you are simply supposed to relax a week before the exam. So during the 7th week, you are simply supposed to refer to the answer plans of all 5 mocks, reread the annotated pre-scene, and attend the final Q&A with Jared. That's our co-tutor for MCS. So when all the other students are trying to extreme levels of stress and trying to attempt mock exams and whatnot, you're not doing it. So that's the smart way to handle your exam pressure. So stick to our study plan, attempt a mock exam per week. If that is the case, you'd have enough time to reflect on the answers you have provided you'd have enough time to rework your answering techniques, rework your or redevelop your answer plans on a mock by mock basis. That's the best way to overcome all your shortcomings. So I hope you'd attempt a mock per week in your coming 5 weeks. All right. So looking at the common reasons for failure, the biggest problem is with regards to practicing just 2 or 3 mocks, because as you know, within each mock, you'd see 4 tasks, and you cannot cover the entire syllabus by just attempting 12 tasks. So 4 tasks into 3 mocks, if assuming that you attempted just 3 mocks, 4 tasks into 3 mocks is 12 tasks in total. You can't cover the entire syllabus in 12 tasks. So that's exactly why you need to attempt 5 mock exams to ensure that you are accustomed with probable scenarios which can be tested at the exam, and on top of that, to ensure that you cover the syllabus, all syllabus areas in its entirety. So if you just practiced 2 or 3 mocks last time, you have to make up your mind to practice 5 mock exams under exam conditions this time. And not practicing mocks under simulated exam conditions is a problem. I've seen students doing this over and over again. When attempting a mock exam, your mock exam consists of, each your real exam actually consists of 4 tasks. So when attempting these 4 tasks at your exam, you have to attempt all 4 tasks at a stretch, sitting in one place and handling exam pressure for 3 hours at a stretch. That's not an easy thing to do. But when it comes to preparations, I've seen students attempting mocks on a task by task basis on different days. So let's assume somebody attempts mock 1, starts attempting mock 1. This individual might attempt the first task on Monday, the second task on Tuesday, the third task on Tuesday, and likewise. However, at the exam, you have to sit in one place and handle pressure 3 hours at a stretch. So it's of utmost importance that you get accustomed to this exam pressure and practice answering and time management techniques well before you try to implement these methodologies at your real exam. Because if you do not practice, you are not in a position to gain good marks, or attempt your real exam in a comfortable position. It's just like what we do in real life. If you want to be a star sportsman, you need to practice every day. If you want to excel in your work, you need to keep practicing what you are doing. If you want to become a good businessman or businesswoman, you have to keep practicing or sticking to a schedule. You have to be disciplined and keep practicing what you do on a daily basis in order to master it. So you need to adhere to a same methodology if you are to pass your exam comfortably this time. So if you did not attempt mock exams under exam conditions previously, you have to make up your mind to attempt each mock under exam conditions. So that's exactly why we provide access to an exam platform, so that you'd get accustomed to exam conditions. Then you'd realize what type of inefficiencies you are faced with. Then you'd realize what type of mistakes you commit. It's better to commit all these mistakes when attempting the mock exams rather than committing these mistakes at your real exam. And lack of technical knowledge is a killer. I took you through an answer pertaining to IFRS 16 leases. So if you're clueless about IFRS 16, you cannot pass this exam. So the same applies to your theoretical elements, especially pertaining to F2 related syllabus areas, because when it comes to F2, there's no thinking involved. Instead, it's just a matter of replicating the information provided under each IAS and IFRS. After replicating the information, then you have to focus on application. So if you don't know your theory, you are not in a position to exercise your application skills. So it's of utmost importance you learn your theory. And especially, I took you through an answer which is relevant to E2 related syllabus content. Although it was highly practical, the answers which were supposed to provide are highly practical. If you do not know theory with regards to how to conduct communications, how to overcome issues with communications, how to overcome issues with dealing with an international company and whatnot, how to overcome issues with sustainability, then you are not in a position to come up with appropriate recommendations. So you need to be conversant with your E2, F2, and P2. So that's exactly why we have developed a set of master classes where we are teaching you theory and ensuring that you improve your application skills via the master classes. And shortcomings in application of knowledge, such as suggesting KPIs, and you saw how you are supposed to apply your knowledge in both the areas which both the questions which I discussed in today's webinar. Uh, in the first part, you were supposed to apply your knowledge pertaining to E2 related knowledge, and in the second part, again, you were supposed to apply your knowledge pertaining to IFRS 16 leases. So in order to overcome shortcomings in these areas, you are supposed to refer to our master classes again. And inappropriate answering technique, most students, as I highlighted earlier, right after reading the question, they'd panic and start typing the fully fledged answer. And halfway through typing the answer, they'd realize that they're headed in the wrong direction. Then they'd delete the answer. And once you do it, you know for a fact that you had wasted a lot of time. And when you know it, it leads to undue stress. And when you are stressed, you'd panic. And when you panic, you'll come up with bogus answers or answers which are not aligned with the requirement. And once you had wasted time, you'd come up with incomplete answers. And as a finance manager, if you provide incomplete answers, you'd end up losing your job. The same applies to your CIMA exam. You'd end up failing your exam. And mismanagement of time, this issue, both these issues with regards to answering technique and mismanagement of time can be overcome by sticking to our answer planning and time management techniques. However, as I highlighted earlier, just because you know these techniques, you will not be in a position to implement these techniques, because take it from me, when developing answer plans for the first time, it will take you 45 minutes. However, if you keep on practicing these techniques, you will be in a position, by the time you are at mock number 5, you will be in a position to develop answer plans within 20 minutes. If you achieve this, then you can come up with high quality answers, well structured answers, at the same time manage your time appropriately at your exam. And lack of evaluation is a problem, because some students out there, especially the type of students who are coming through the exemption route, have no clue about comparing their answers with the suggested answer. So the suggested answer highlights the type of answers you are supposed to provide within the answer. But if you do not know your theory, if you do not know how to apply your knowledge, then just because you go through the suggested answer and try to compare that with your real answer, you are not in a position to understand your shortcomings. So in such an environment, it's better to opt for services offered by a specialist. So, opt for tutor feedback, because if you do, then you are in a position to understand your shortcomings pertaining to knowledge areas as well as your application skills. And not adhering to a study plan is a major killer. That's exactly why students wait until the last moment, last 2 weeks to get everything done. I've come up with a to-do list, which I explained in webinar number 1. There's a lot to get done. So if you wait until the last moment, you won't get anything done. Take it from me, you'd be extremely stressed. And on the day of the exam, you'd face a lot of issues, and you'd have to repeat your sitting once more. So in order to avoid all these shortcomings, I've come up with solutions. So try to implement these solutions. Start working right now. If you are yet to invest on study material and mock exams, do it right now. I'm not asking you to purchase from us. You can purchase from any service provider out there. However, you need to start right now, or else forget about the sitting in November. Plan on doing it in February 2023. Okay, so having that said that, let me remind you about the pass rates pertaining to the February 2023 sitting. We are yet to compile all the data pertaining to the sitting which concluded recently. So we achieved a 91% pass rate for MCS in February. And mainly, students who stuck to the study plan and attempted a mock per week were able to easily pass the MCS exam. And a reminder about the 50% discount which you're offering on the MCS premium package. So if you go for a full payment, you can purchase the package at £599. All right. Any questions before we conclude the session? We covered a lot. It had taken us an hour and 45 minutes already. So this is the longest webinar. I've been talking for so long now. It's your time to talk. Any questions? All right, seems like there aren't any questions. So, if you want to contact us, you can do it via our website, which is www.study@tcs.com, or you can drop us an email via info@study@tcs.com, or drop us a message or call us on our WhatsApp number. And I urge you guys to follow us on our social media handles, especially TikTok. I hope you accessed the 3 TikTok videos. We shared the link to our TikTok page via the WhatsApp group. So please go through these TikTok videos on a daily basis so that you constantly keep reminding yourself about the most important points which are highlighted within the pre-scene, which is going to be extremely beneficial for you, because when developing your answers as a finance manager, you are supposed to come up with suggestions or recommendations which are totally aligned with the internal and external dynamics, especially the internal dynamics of Cuppcar. So it's not too easy to remember the most important points. So go through these TikToks. The combined time of these 3 TikToks, or time duration of these 3 TikToks, is just 6 to 9 minutes, if I'm not mistaken. So on a daily basis, keep watching these TikToks so that you remember the most important points. And I will also be developing a set of TikToks for answering technique, where I'll highlight what you need to achieve, so that if you keep watching them, you'd constantly keep reminding yourself about the checklist which you need to fulfill in order to be in a position to come up with high quality answers. All right. So having said that, it brings us to the end of today's session. Thank you very much for being attentive and being part and parcel of this session. I hope you gained something out of this. I hope you understood the answering and time management techniques. And I hope you understood how to practically apply or implement these techniques based on the answer plan and the discussion of the answer plan which I carried out. And I hope you got a glimpse of what is covered via our answer plans, our mocks, as well as the master classes. So thank you very much for joining in. I hope you'd join our 4th webinar, exam prep, which is happening during the next weekend. Thank you very much and take care.